Hello, Tar Heel Nation. Welcome back to another episode of UNC Hoops Talk. A ton of games since the last podcast, a lot to cover, a lot to talk about and go over, and not ending the way we wanted to in the PK80. We're going to jump right into that. Hopefully everybody had a very happy Thanksgiving, got lots of good food, lots of time with family, and I'm glad that you're back here joining me on the UNC Hoops Talk podcast. This week, I'm bringing back Blake from Keeping It Heel. You can follow Blake on Twitter at BlakeKCMO. Did I get that right, Blake?
That's right.
And you're still editing and writing pretty much everything and throwing out all kinds of stuff over there at Keeping It Heel, right?
Absolutely. We stay really busy.
Yeah, and obviously a very busy time of the year, football winding down for the Tar Heels and basketball picking up here with the tournaments and lots of games. We've had 4 games now since the last podcast. So we're going to quickly go through the first couple because I don't think they need a lot of discussion. Pretty easy wins for the Tar Heels. First, we had last Monday already. Stanford out. This is the late game. If you stayed up to watch this game, the late game where Kenny went off in the beginning of the game, scored like the first 14 points or something crazy like that for the Tar Heels. Was like 4 for 4 from 3, ended up with 20 points. Joel took over in the second half, went off for 29 points, hit 5 threes. Yeah, I mean, like I said, pretty easy win for the Tar Heels. They won 96-72 over Roy Williams' former assistant. Blake, what do you got much to add to this game? I mean, that's kind of what it was.
Yeah, no, it was a good shooting performance, no doubt, but it was against an overmatched opponent. Stanford's on its way, and Jared Hass is doing a good job there. But you wouldn't expect a team like North Carolina to struggle too bad there. Of course, the hot shooting of Kenny Williams in the first half was definitely helpful, and the same thing with Barry in the second half. But even without those performances being as dynamic as they were, I think that's a game that the Tar Heels win.
Right, and I guess to be a little bit negative or pick out some stuff, this is kind of the first game where our freshmen's big struggle a little bit, and obviously Stanford's strength was inside, so that affects, and obviously their weaker point was their guards and allowed for Joel and Kenny to kind of take over, but it was kind of a thing to see is our big guys struggling a little bit. Garrison didn't have any points, 3 rebounds. Sterling still had 7 points and 5 rebounds, and Huffman, probably what we need out of him with 8 points and 5 rebounds. But you could just kind of tell they saw a different big man than they had in the first couple of games.
Yeah, the thing to me that stuck out in that was that the 3 freshman bigs played only 33 minutes combined, but still had 12 fouls. So that was the first game where you really saw them struggle to sort of adapt to the style of play that was going on.
Right, and obviously foreshadowing to tonight's game as we are taping this late Sunday night, hopefully not going into Monday morning here, but right after the kind of debacle that was the Michigan State game. But we'll get to that much later. But it does bring us to the PK80, the 80th, I guess, birthday party of Phil Knight out at Nike. I think a tournament that would be awesome to have every year. Obviously, you can't call it the PK80. They'd have to call it something else. Of course, it would be great to move it a time zone or two, at least for our benefit, to the east, maybe Central Zone, Eastern time zone, so we're not staying up quite so late to watch all these games. But it looks like, a great tournament, some really good games, some good matchups, and still finishing here with the Duke game, and we'll kind of keep you updated with that game as long as it looks good for Florida in the championship of the other bracket. But North Carolina starting off with Portland in this game, and yeah, kind of like the Stanford game, and like you were saying, Blake, overmatched opponent, and we got kind of what we expected in a 102-78 victory over, I don't even know what they're called, Portland something.
The Pilots, so the Portland Pilots.
There you go. Why didn't I know that?
Well, yeah, and and the impressive thing for me is that Terry Porter's a head coach, ex-NBA player, very good NBA player for quite a few years. His sons both play on the team, and they were really good. I mean, they were 2 of the better players in that game.
They were.
One of them had 19, the other one had 13 points.
Yep, Franklin went for 19.
So they were very good.
13. Another one of their guys going off for 17. For us, Luke May, 20 points, 10 rebounds. Something we've come to expect from Luke May, but I don't think we can expect that all year round. Kenny Williams, 18 points. And this one, 4 more 3-pointers for him. 17. Oh, maybe I got that wrong. 17 for Kenny. It was 18 for Joel, and Joel was the one with 4 3-pointers. There's one line off here on the stat box. Kind of the surprising stat in this one was Andrew Platek with 12, again against Portland, but something we'd like to see a little more often from whenever we can get it, I guess, from Andrew.
I think Andrew Platek's going to be a really good player, and I've been saying for really since he signed and committed before that he was kind of a Wes Miller-esque player. I think he's going to be better than Wes Miller overall, but I think he's a guy that has obviously skill from the outside. I think he's a real character guy. I think he's a good locker room kind of a guy. And obviously, unless something crazy happens, he's a 4-year player. So he's one of those guys that's a really good player to mix in with, a couple of really good 2 or 3-year players, and maybe a 5-star one and done here and there. He's just a really good team guy.
Yeah, just be careful what you say about Twitter. I had somebody going off on Andrew Platek for whatever reason after tonight's game. Again, we'll get to that later, but I agree. He's the type of guy you want in your locker room. He's going to hustle. He's going to do everything he needs to do to get as much minutes as he can. He's not going to be, complaining or transferring because he's not getting enough minutes or enough shots or, whatever. And that's kind of what Roy's built at UNC. I think people kind of overlook that a lot. And again, I don't want to talk too much about tonight's game already, but not necessarily fire Roy, but the Roy is a horrible coach and North Carolina's going to the NIT crowd came out a little bit tonight, which is disappointing to see after we win a national championship and we lose to the number 4 team in the country in Michigan State. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Do you got anything else to say about the Portland game?
We did what we should have done there. A decent performance all around. But again, it's a team that was overmatched. Portland, not a terrible team by any stretch, but certainly in terms of talent, they don't have what it takes to keep up with the North Carolina Dukes and Michigan States on a typical night.
Right. And again, another stat, as I'm just kind of looking through, we out-rebound them 51-33. And, it's, again, our freshman bigs, or at least Garrison Brooks, bounced back a little bit. But, yeah, like you said, it's what to be expected. I don't want to spend too much time on there. We got bigger and badder things to talk about here. So we move on to the second round of the PK80 against Arkansas, who apparently was going to steal our national championship with the revenge they were going to bring on us from the NCAA tournament last year. Didn't quite go in their favor. We come away with an 87-68 victory. Kind of back and forth in this, not in the sense that it was close, but in the sense we kind of had the game won and they made a little bit of a run back in the second half. What's your take on the Arkansas game?
Arkansas is going to be a tournament team. Arkansas is going to be a good team in the SEC this year. I don't think they're going to win the SEC by any means, but I do think they're a tournament team, possibly a team that Mike Anderson gets to the Sweet 16 or maybe even sneaks into the Elite 8. Now, I'm not going to throw a whole bunch of money down on that, but they are a team that I think is going to grow throughout the season. They're a team that has 2 terrific scorers in Daryl Macon and Jalen Barford, just terrific scorers, great offensive players. And, those are the type of players that in the first couple of rounds of the tournament can kind of carry you, 2 or 3 wins maybe. I don't think they're a team that's going to set the world on fire, but I do think that we perform well against a team that's going to be very good by the time we look back at this season.
Yeah, and, obviously it gives us a little bit of a different look. They like to pressure a lot, and obviously our style works well against them. We beat them in the tournament, and we took care of business here. As long as we can handle that pressure. In this one, I got to make sure I get to the right game here. This is kind of the Luke May game, I guess. 28 points, 16 rebounds. He becomes the first player in North Carolina, or at North Carolina, to get 100 points and 50 rebounds in the first 5 games since Antoine Jameson. Wow, Antoine Walker. We don't need to be saying that stuff on the podcast. So obviously good company for him. Kenny Williams, 19 points in this one again, 8 rebounds, 13 for Joel. And yeah, we take care of business to move into the championship of our bracket in the PK80. And yeah, like you said, Arkansas is a good team. I believe this is the first at-large team we played from that made the tournament last year, this season. Because I don't remember if I think Bucknell made it last year, but it was because they won their conference. They didn't get an at-large bid, right?
Yeah, I believe that's correct. Yeah.
So, and it is to say, Daryl Macon for the Arkansas Razorbacks missed a decent stretch in there with he had some kind of injury. He went out, or I remember. So he is one of their better players. They went a good stretch without him. He only scored 7 points in the game. So it is what it is. But kind of as the theme has gone so far, the Tar Heels kind of take care of business as they should and as we expect. We out-rebound the Razorbacks 46-30. You got anything else on the Arkansas game?
No, again, it's a game that the Tar Heels played well. They shot well enough and showed some defensive intensity, kind of firing back at the style of play that Mike Anderson likes to play. But again, an outmatched opponent. Somebody that they should have won against.
Right. And you mentioned the shooting, and I mean I'm looking at one game stats here in Arkansas, but it's been kind of the trend. We shot 50% from three in this game, 8 for 16. We've mentioned Kenny shooting well. Joel's had multiple games with 3 or more 3-pointers. Obviously, we haven't seen Cam Johnson yet. Andrew Platek in the Portland game hit a couple of threes. Jalik has gotten into with at least one, or I shouldn't say at least, but a couple of games with a 3 made. And obviously Luke May shooting the heck out of the ball up until the Michigan State game. And I want to kind of transition into the Michigan State game. Matchups obviously different. What is that the biggest difference between the Michigan State game and what we played like in the previous 4 games?
Oh, well, I mean, it's everything. Michigan State's a terrific team. And their one loss was to Duke, who is probably even better than Michigan State. By the end of the season, I don't know which one will be better. I know that they have 2 of the better players in the country, certainly in Marvin Bagley and Miles Bridges. The thing about Michigan State is that you're looking at a team that has terrific athletes, but also guys that match up well individually. So there's nobody that Miles Bridges is going to go against this year, with the exception of maybe a Bagley, that he's not going to create a tremendous mismatch. And he didn't play particularly awesome tonight. He didn't have to. None of them necessarily played that well, other than Langford, who just shot the lights out of the building. And he was terrific, particularly from 3-point range. But they've just got an all-around really good team. When you've got guys like Cassius Winston and Langford on the perimeter, and then you've got a guy like Nick Ward, who's 6'8", 245. He's just like a bull, in the paint. And then you've got a freshman like Jaren Jackson, who can play extremely well inside, but he can also come outside. He can shoot the ball, and he can sort of create space. And I mean, it's just a nightmare. And then you throw in a guy that's a top 5 pick in next year's draft in Miles Bridges, and they're just a great team. The problem that you see with the North Carolina team this year against a team like Michigan State is that with the decent size of Michigan State, but all that talent and the versatility, is that you've got the 3 freshman bigs who are going to struggle against, veteran players and certainly bigger players and more talented players. But you also see the guy that's sort of been your workhorse so far in Luke May struggle, because Luke May, for as good as he's been, he's undersized at his position. And you definitely see that on the defensive side of the ball. He often gets beat in the paint. Even with his arms outstretched and jumping, he's not stopping, close range shots. And then, offensively, he's going to struggle down low with guys that are 2 or 3 inches taller than him. So if he's not hitting shots from the outside, then he is going to struggle, certainly against teams like this. And you saw the entire team tonight struggle. Nobody could hit a shot to save their life. And the thing was, they still didn't lose that bad when you consider how many layups they missed and how many free throws they missed.
So you hit on a ton there, especially as it relates to a Tar Heel fan. So we're gonna try to break it down a little bit and try to stay as positive as we can here. I think what you said first is kind of the biggest problem a Tar Heel fan has with tonight is this Michigan State team lost to Duke, who's really young, is starting 4 freshmen. You hear all the things, take out how many lottery picks they have and all that stuff, and then we get when you look at the score, we get crushed by them. We lose by 18 points, whatever it ended up being. So obviously there's that aspect to it. But then obviously when we bring in the stats is where we kind of see what happened, and like you said, not as bad as a loss as it looks on paper, or just the casual fan kind of watching the game or seeing the score or anything like that. So yeah, let's kind of jump into that a little bit. I have a couple of stats in front of me, but I know you said you had the box score up. So statistically, one of, if not the worst Tar Heel experiences statistically, shooting the ball. I do think, and I said this, we weren't horrible on defense. We held them to 63 points, and they shot the ball pretty well. I mean, any open shot we gave them, they knocked in. So obviously, I guess you could say that's bad defense if we give them open looks. But take out those open looks, our defense was pretty good. We made them work to get open shots at the very least, and held them to one shot a decent amount of times. Am I crazy for saying this? Am I too optimistic for Tar Heel?
No, I don't think the defense was bad. But it also sort of felt like they played. I mean, they got a lead and they sort of just kind of played. I'm not going to say they played not to lose, but they didn't play crazy aggressively after that. And that's why you saw the amount of possessions in that game, dramatically go down. Now, I will say they had 23 turnovers, 25 turnovers, or something crazy. I mean, it's amazing to me that a team, I've never seen Roy Williams coach team force as many turnovers as they did tonight, 20 plus to their opponent. And the fouls, the discrepancy in fouls, Michigan State had 23 fouls and North Carolina had 14, and they weren't able to capitalize on that. So you're talking about, winning the turnover battle and winning the battle, who fouls the most, and they still lost by 18 points. I mean, it seemed like a 200-point loss. And the fact that they were able to battle back and get as close as they did under 8 minutes was a miracle. I didn't think that would ever even happen. It was just a battle around night.
And they out-physical us. I think that was a big thing, too, they were just – obviously, we have freshman bigs. We've talked about that. They have a long ways to go. But they just, pushed us around. And it wasn't hard to push us around. It didn't seem like we were, just – again, it's one of those games we're going to have an off night or whatever. But they – and that, I think when we bring up the Duke game too, they didn't do this against Duke. They didn't rebound the ball well. I mean, that's what Tom Izzo is known for, and he talked about it in his post game after the Duke game, is how poorly they rebounded the ball. Well, that wasn't the case tonight. They were back to a Tom Izzo game where they were physical, they rebounded and kind of took it to us, and they got fouls for it. But yeah, and I don't know what the discrepancy in rebounds is. I don't have that in front of me. I don't know if you do, and what it looks like. Maybe I'm way off base, but.
The rebounding battle was clearly was Michigan State. It was 52-36. So
okay.
They won that by 16. And I will say that it's a huge difference rebounding against North Carolina right now and rebounding against Duke, because Duke, number one, again, has Marvin Bagley. They also have Wendell Carter, two guys that are
and Bolden coming off the bench.
Yeah, Bolden. I mean, guys capable of getting 10 to 15 rebounds in a given game. And I mean, heck, Bagley has been getting 10 to 15 rebounds every game. So a lot different. Duke's a lot more physical on the inside. They've got a lot more talent in there.
So and Luke has been getting 10 rebounds a game, but you mentioned it too, and I think this is something too he's got to learn, but also something that's going to be a reason why Michigan State's kind of a bad matchup for us, is because the teams we've been playing, and everybody, if you listen to the post-game interviews or guys getting talked to in the locker room, is Luke is excelling because he's such a different matchup. He can step out for a big guy and knock him down. Well, Michigan State in Bridges and Jackson as well has those athletic bigs that can step out and guard him. They can, Bridges can knock down a three himself on the offensive end. Almost the same type of player as Luke, except, taller and more athletic. So bad matchup for Luke, and he's got to adjust, obviously, if we want to have success, but a big reason for that as well.
Look, I mean, Luke May can create some mismatches, certainly, with his ability to shoot from outside, but as many mismatches as he can create, there's going to be that many mismatches created against him as well, because he can practice all day long and he can shoot the ball all day long, but one thing he can't do is make himself grow 2 or 3 inches. He just can't do it. So unless he starts playing on stilts, to make up for the size disadvantage, I don't think this is going to be an aberration. I think in ACC play, when you see big, front courts with, two or three guys that are, 6'8", 6'9", or taller, go up against him, I think this is going to be something that you see multiple times this year, and that's no fault of his, and that's nothing against him. I think he's a terrific player. Certainly for a preferred walk-on turned scholarship player turned celebrity, he's been very good. But I think this is something you're going to continue to see. North Carolina is going to struggle against teams that have a size advantage inside.
Yeah, so obviously we don't want to beat a dead horse here going at it too much, but let's quickly, if you got those stats, and I know I've seen a couple on Twitter, I'll have to try to get them off the top of my head, but we said statistically one of the worst shooting nights for North Carolina, definitely under Roy Williams, but probably even all-time. I think their shooting percentage was like 24% overall, and something like 5 or 6% from three, and the only three-pointer we hit was Joel's buzzer beater at halftime, right?
Yeah, 24.6%, which from everything I saw, I had to turn off the game and turn off Twitter for about a half an hour, and then I hopped on here with you. So I haven't seen anything since, but from everything I saw, it looks like it was the worst shooting night in program history. I'll have to verify that later. And then 1 for 18 from three-point range, which is the worst I think I've ever seen of anything, less than 6%. A lot of that was, Theo Pinson should just stop shooting threes, to be honest. I'm not sure why he's throwing up threes, but there's somewhere Dexter Strickland, who has a new name now, is sitting there loving Theo Pinson's fadeaway jump shot from 27 feet. But I don't love it, and I never will. A lot of that was also Joel Berry's 1 for 6. Guys just weren't shooting well at all. And when you continue to get through the game and you're only down by a dozen and you keep shooting threes, it makes me wonder why. But then I looked at all the missed layups, and I'm like, well, they can't hit a layup. You might as well throw up a three.
Well, and you said that, at the beginning of the whole talk about the Michigan State game, and, like we said, it's an 18-point loss, but they missed, I think they said 15 layups. So, and some of them were wide. I mean, Kenny Williams was on a fast break, a wide open layup. There's no reason a scholarship player in Division I basketball, let alone a high school player, should miss a wide open layup like that. We were intimidated, or we were off. Something was wrong, obviously, but you say we make 10 of those free throws, that's 20 points right there, and we have the win. We haven't mentioned free throws yet. I think we were like 58% on free throws. So, yeah. I don't know. Do you want anything else you got to say?
This is one of those games that you hope as a whole is sort of an outlier. You don't want to focus on it for too long. You want to move forward, but you do want to address the issues that caused it to happen. Unfortunately, with this game, the better team did win. I'm not going to say that Michigan State is not the better team. I 100% think Michigan State is the better team. However, missed layups and missed free throws from a North Carolina Roy Williams coached team, you have to assume is not going to happen that often. So losing by 18 when you miss double-digit free throws and double-digit layups, obviously Michigan State plays that game differently if the score is closer.
Right.
So I'm not going to say that, you can't just add up the points and say, right, okay, well, we would have won. Yeah, right. You can't always just extrapolate missed points and say, okay, well, we would have won by 4. Michigan State would have played differently. I think Josh Langford would have thrown up a whole bunch more shots because he was on it. They would have been passing the ball and getting him to shoot some more shots. I mean, he had a billion points and they didn't even need it from him.
Right.
So yeah, it's a game that you've got to let go. But tomorrow, I'm sure there's going to be layup drills. Tomorrow, I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of free throws, and I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot of running. But you got to move forward, and you play Michigan State this week, or Michigan, sorry. That's not going to be an easy game. So you got to move forward.
Right. So and really, it's going to be probably somewhere in the middle, right? We've been shooting the ball really well coming into this, playing lesser talent or whatever. This game we shoot historically badly, poorly, however you want to say that. So it's probably going to obviously end up somewhere in the middle. Common sense would say, and like you said, put that all together, and we probably still lose to Michigan State. Maybe it's by 2 points, maybe it's by 8 points or something. But it's a game, and like you said, the better team probably won right now. hopefully with Roy Williams' development of big guys and just of guys in general and teams. I think he's really good about the chemistry and focusing on putting teams together. Hopefully by March, we don't have to say that. Hopefully we don't have to say Michigan State is the better video and what the audio looks like. But like I was saying, ACC Big Ten Challenge. Do you even know who won the last 3 ACC Big Ten Challenges?
I'm fairly certain the Big Ten won last year. But I'd even have to fact check that.
Okay, yeah, I don't think – I mean, I think it's one of those things that ESPN keeps track of, but nobody absolutely cares about who actually wins between the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Of course, we do care who wins between Michigan and North Carolina. They play Wednesday at let me get the time here. We are on ESPN at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. So it is another big-time team playing another team from Michigan here. I have not seen Michigan play much this year. Have you seen them play at all, Blake?
I really haven't, no. And I don't know that they've played any competition necessarily worth seeing that much. But again, I'm not sure. I haven't watched a whole lot of Michigan basketball. I've watched a lot of the top teams. I've watched a lot of the West Coast games because they've been on late and I don't have anything to do at night when I'm, up writing. But no Michigan.
Yeah, so I have not either. One thing we do know, obviously, about John Beilein teams, they do like to shoot the 3. They like to sit back in a zone. So we'll see how our shooting is against Michigan. They probably have kind of a stretch 4 like Luke. So we'll have to, we were just talking about that matchup between Luke and bigger stretch 4s and more athletic guys. We'll have to see how he recovers from tonight and how North Carolina recovers as a whole. It'll be an interesting matchup. It is in Chapel Hill. I guess that gives us a little bit of advantage. I don't know, you got any other thoughts on this game here?
Well, I can confirm that my earlier assumption was wrong. The ACC actually did win in 2016.
There, my point was proven there. No one actually cares.
Yeah, nobody knows and nobody cares. The 2 years before that, it was the Big Ten. And still no one cares.
I knew that the Big Ten was kind of on a stretch there because the ACC won like the first 8 or something like that. And maybe that's why we cared because we're ACC fans above that. But then I do know the Big Ten was on a big stretch. I feel like they had the lead as far as they won more. And if I would have had to guess, I would have said the Big Ten last year too. But we're talking way too much about something no one cares about. So yeah, Michigan, any other insight on Michigan here before we move on to the next game?
So to this point, Michigan has played North Florida. They've played Central Michigan, Southern Miss, LSU, who actually beat them. They played Chaminade. They beat VCU, and they played UC Riverside. So certainly not a whole lot of RPI love on Michigan's early season schedule. I don't think Michigan's going to be a powerhouse that we should lose to. If we shoot like we did tonight, there's a high school down the street from here that may beat North Carolina. So, but like I said, I don't think that's going to happen every night. I think the more important thing to look at is individually. When you look at Joel Berry, I'd have to look up to be sure, but I think Joel's like 5 for his last 23 shots, or 7 from 3. So he's not been shooting well at all. He had the big game, where he scored 29 points against Stanford. Outside of that, he's really not been sharp at all. And I think this team's going to be super successful. You're going to need to see a complete turnaround in Joel's efficiency. Because if even Joel Berry is on tonight, this is probably a different game. Because we've seen games before where everybody else has sort of been just all right, and Joel can take over a game. And that creates opportunities for other guys. So if Joel hits 2 or 3 threes, in the first half, in the second half, things are probably different in this game.
Yeah. So, we're going to say that, from here on out, how Joel plays is kind of how we go. But let's move on here. Then we play Davidson. It's technically at Davidson. I don't know if it's technically played at their school, but it is in Charlotte. This will be Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN2. And again, I have not seen Davidson play. The only thing I know about Davidson is what Roy briefly mentioned in one of his press conferences about them jacking up like 50-some threes in a game and making like 26 of them, which kind of scares us Tar Heel fans because we know how well we guard the three. You got any other insight on Davidson?
So it looks like, just a quick look at their schedule thus far. Davidson played Charleston Southern, destroyed them. UNC Wilmington destroyed them. They lost by 13 to Nevada. Also actually lost by 16 to App State, which is probably a game that you don't want to lose to. And then they'll play Charlotte, and then they play North Carolina on Friday. So I don't know that this is going to be the Davidson team of old. This isn't going to be a Steph Curry version Davidson, but certainly it's still not a team to sleep on.
Right, and especially playing on the road. And then we haven't even mentioned here the quick turnarounds. We've played 3 games in the last 4 days. So we come back and play Wednesday again, 1 day off, and then Friday. And then that leads us into the last game of this week. We play Sunday, so with 1 day in between again, we play Tulane back in Chapel Hill. It'll be a 2 p.m. Eastern tip on ESPN2. And yeah, I don't know if you're pulling up their schedule or not, but I'm assuming it's going to be kind of the same thing as we haven't heard much from them, so I don't think there's any big upsets. They've maybe kind of done what they've done, and if we play North Carolina basketball, it's kind of that old coach speak. If we take care of ourselves, we're going to be fine. We're going to beat them. I don't know if you have any more to say about Tulane there.
Anything we'd say is probably a waste of time. But I think they can score some points. But I don't think there's certainly not anybody you want to lose to. I'm not. I want to preface some of what we're saying by saying that I'm not concerned about tonight's loss. I am concerned with how it happened, just because you didn't just lose to a team that was shooting great. You didn't just lose to the better team, even though in this case I think we did. You lost by missing the 2 easiest parts of basketball, which is layups and free throws. And that's the part that's kind of exhausting about watching that 2-hour game, is that it was just poorly played. But that's also why I'm not worried about it. If you lose a game to Tulane or Davidson, then we can start panicking. I'm still not going to fire Roy or anything ridiculous like that, but I'm sure somebody will.
Oh yeah.
But you don't want to lose a game probably in the rest of your non-conference schedule.
Yeah,
but then
maybe
Tennessee could be a tough game, and I do think Tennessee's going to be a decent team this season. Rick Barnes has done good things there, and that one is actually in Knoxville,
right.
I believe.
I just bought my tickets today. I was all excited, and then this game kind of took all the hope out of me. Right?
That could be tough. That could be a tough one. But I do have to say, when we're talking about Rick Barnes, I always still think about Texas. I'm kind of glad that this isn't one of those years that we play Texas, because heaven knows we can't beat Texas. We can't ever beat Texas. It doesn't matter what season we play Texas, we can't beat them. And Texas is going to be really good too.
Yeah, so I totally agree. I said it kind of before this game starts with Michigan State that obviously we don't want to lose, but if we're going to lose, let's at least play well and lose to a better team, which isn't the case definitely tonight. We've hashed that out enough. But yeah, all these games we're talking about here: Michigan in Chapel Hill, Davidson, even though it's away, Tulane at home. We really don't have much to gain besides if we can get better and improve on what we did. But we have everything to lose if we're going to lose one of those games. And they have, everything to gain. They come in and, it's their Super Bowl playing, at the Dean Dome and, hosting. All those Davidson guys are the guys that grew up being Tar Heel fans and didn't make it. And, they want to beat them now. So, yeah, they definitely have everything to gain. And, we've seen that before. We've also seen North Carolina drop some of those games. We've lost to UAB in the past. I was at the Belmont game in the Dean Dome a few years ago when we dropped that one of the first games of the year, and I actually had to fly back to Nashville with the Belmont team on the same plane, so kind of rubbed it in a little bit. So we've seen it before, but I would say we haven't seen it in the last couple of years as well. Both the championship game years in the last 2 years, we didn't kind of drop, the UAB game. We didn't drop one of those. We did have the Northern Iowa one without Marcus Page, but full strength haven't done that. So. And then, going into ACC play, we'll look at how we can integrate Cam Johnson. So I haven't necessarily talked to you about Cam Johnson. So before we close this out, you got any insight, or kind of what are you looking for from Cam Johnson this year as we bring him back?
Well, assuming that he comes back 100% from injury, which I haven't heard much about how he's doing. You hope that he comes back 100%. My initial anticipation was that he could potentially be our high scorer. I think he's that good, and I think Kenny Williams has been very good so far, so this could be a little bit different depending on how good Cam Johnson ends up being. But I thought initially he would be our best three-point shooter and that he had a chance to lead the team in scoring. Now, I don't know if either of those will happen, but I do think he's a difference maker. And I do think that he can do a pretty good job guarding scorers on the perimeter as well. He's got pretty good length and size. But I think the biggest impact from him that you'll feel is on the offensive side of the ball. So, I look for him to shoot better than 40% from three and score, 13 to 15 points a game every night. And certainly, you can't look for one guy to be your savior in a night like tonight against Michigan State. But, if you throw another really good scorer out there when everybody else is cold, maybe it changes the game because as much as I like Theo Pinson, when Theo Pinson is your sort of best player in a game, you're probably going to lose that game. And Theo is a good athlete, and Theo can make some things happen. He's a decent ball handler, and he can move the ball, on a fast break and in transition. But Theo shouldn't ever be the best player in a game,
especially shooting or leading scorer like he was tonight against Michigan State. So.
Right.
I've took enough time of yours, Blake. It's late, so get to bed. Everybody, thank you for listening. Go follow Blake on Twitter at BlakeKCMO. I'm at Twitter at AllTarHeelDan. Don't jump off the cliff yet, Tar Heel fans. Long season. We're going to be okay. Blake, thank you so much for coming on. Sorry for the technical difficulties there. We'll get everything worked out, and hopefully it'll be okay. Other than that, we'll see you guys all next week. Go Heels.
Thanks, Dan.